Imagine walking into a modern evidence locker. Instead of a weapon or a digital drive, the primary piece of evidence is a blackened, leathery strip of muscle, as tough as a boot sole and smelling faintly of salt and wood smoke. To the casual observer, it's a primitive snack, but to us, it is a fossilized engine. We are performing an autopsy of power, looking at a piece of Silk Road Jerky not as a culinary choice, but as the high-tensile wire that held an empire's economy together. If the silk was the blood of the ancient world's trade, this preserved protein was the oxygen. Without it, the logistical machine of the caravan, a sprawling multi-ton organism of beasts and men, would have withered and died within the first 100 miles of the Taklamakan Desert. This meat didn't just provide calories, it provided time. It allowed a merchant to bypass local seasonal famines and push through dead zones where nothing grew and nothing lived. It was a calculated defiance of rot, a technological mastery over the biology of decay that turned a trek into a conquest. Every fiber of this meat represents a managed resource, a slaughtered animal, and a strategic decision made months before a single bale of silk was loaded. Today, we are analyzing this historical menu as an autopsy of power. When we look at a Silk Road caravan, we aren't just looking at a group of travelers, we are looking at a moving vertical city. At the top of this social stratification sat the merchant elites, men who often didn't own the goods they carried, but acted as venture capitalists for distant dynasties. For them, preserved meat was a financial insurance policy. But as we move down the line to the camel drivers, the guards, and the indentured porters, the jerky shifts from a strategic asset to a brutal necessity of labor hierarchy. In the harsh archaeological context of the Central Asian steppes, food was the ultimate tool of resource control. Historians like Valerie Hansen have noted that these caravans were often smaller and more precarious than the Hollywood epics suggest. This meant that every ounce of weight had to justify its existence. Fresh meat was a liability. It breathed, it ate, and it died at the wrong time. Jerky, however, was predictable. By converting a living animal into a stack of dry, lightweight planks, the elite leadership exercised a form of temporal authority. They decided exactly when the energy stored in that meat would be released to the workers. The labor required to produce this fuel was immense and fell on the nameless many. While the merchant looked at the horizon, a specialized class of nomadic butchers and camp followers engaged in a massive operation of elite consumption. To feed a caravan of 60 men and 100 camels for a 3-month leg, you aren't just drying a few steaks, you are managing the systematic slaughter of entire herds, the procurement of massive quantities of salt, often a currency in its own right, and the constant maintenance of smudge fires. This was a world where social signaling was etched into the ration. The Sogdian merchants might dine on jerky flavored with expensive imported cumin or peppercorns, while the laborers gnawed on the toughest connective tissues, flavored only by the salt of their own sweat and the alkaline dust of the trail. The jerky wasn't just food, it was a physical manifestation of the contract between the provider and the provided. To eat was to acknowledge your place in the machine. It was a cycle of material culture where the animal's life was traded for the human's endurance, all to ensure that a bolt of fabric reached a destination half a world away. To truly understand this meat, you have to stop thinking like a chef and start thinking like a structural engineer. I'm standing over a slab of raw beef, roughly 20 pounds of lean muscle, and my first realization is that I'm looking at a massive logistical problem. In the context of a 14th century caravan, I don't just need this to be edible, I need it to be indestructible. The first step is a surgical deconstruction. I have to strip away every single pocket of yellow fat. On a modern steak, fat is flavor. On the Silk Road, fat is the enemy. It goes rancid, it turns bitter, and it carries moisture that invites the very bacteria we're trying to starve. As I spend the next hour hunched over the table, my hands getting slick and my back beginning to ache, I realize the sheer time cost of this preparation. To feed a medium-sized caravan, a team of laborers would be doing this for days, their knives constantly dulling against the sinew. Once the meat is lean, I'm slicing it into thin, translucent sheets, always against the grain. If you cut it with the grain, it becomes a literal piece of wood that no human jaw can break. I then submerge these strips in a heavy brine. This isn't a delicate seasoning process, it's a chemical assault. The salt draws the water out of the cells through osmosis, creating an environment so hostile that microbes can't survive. Now comes the hardest part, the drying. In the high-altitude, low-humidity environments of the Pamir Mountains, the wind does most of the work, but it's a judgment call that requires decades of inherited knowledge. I've hung my strips over a low, smoldering fire of fruit wood and dried dung, the common fuel of the steppes. The smoke acts as a secondary preservative, coating the meat in phenols that ward off insects. The physical difficulty here is the constant vigilance. If the fire is too hot, you cook the meat, trapping moisture inside and ensuring it rots within a week. If it's too cool, the flies get to it before it skins over. I find myself checking the strips every few hours, feeling the texture shift from soft muscle to something resembling wet cardboard, then finally to the brittle, resonant snap of true jerky. The transformation is staggering. This 20-pound slab has shrunk to barely 5 pounds. It's light, it's dry, and it's ugly. But when I try to bite into a finished piece, the sensory experience is one of pure resistance. My jaw muscles tire after just a few minutes of chewing. It's an exhausting way to eat. This is the aha moment for the explorer. You realize that only an elite structure could afford the massive upfront waste of water and weight, losing 75% of the animal's mass just to gain the portability of the remaining 25%. This wasn't a choice made for taste. It was a choice made because the environment demanded a fuel that wouldn't betray you. It's the taste of survival, carved out of a landscape that wanted to keep everything for itself. As I hold this final salt-crusted strip, the evidence is clear. This isn't just a snack, it is the compressed history of human movement. When we reassemble the facts, the taste that confirms a mastery of salt and smoke, the labor that reveals a strict hierarchy of preparation, and the excess of slaughtering entire herds for a portable fraction of their weight, we see the Silk Road for what it truly was, a victory of logistics over geography. This jerky was the battery of the ancient world. It allowed power to be projected across vast, inhospitable voids where empires should have ended, but didn't. The merchant's silk and the scholar's scrolls only moved because the porter's stomach was anchored by this indestructible protein. By deconstructing this meal, we've uncovered the hidden cost of global trade, a cost measured in salt, sweat, and the total control of biology. We don't just cook ancient food, we decode the civilizations behind them.